All right, in this video, we're going to take a break from having me watch awful stuff on TikTok and then go home and drink myself into unconsciousness because I just can't stand living in this world anymore. And instead, we're going to rank the greatest television shows of all time. Now, this is an internet ranking. What we're going to do is the internet has ranked these from S tier, which I guess is superior tier, or sheesh, I really love that show tier. And then they go downhill from A to F. So if it's S tier, it's at the very top. If it's A, it's good, B, bad. You can probably figure out the rest of this. And if you can't, take a look in the mirror. You may be an idiot. So the first one is Game of Thrones. There's like a lot of them, so I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. Game of Thrones is an S tier show. Yes, they ruined it. They ruined it because the media started bothering them about the fact that it wasn't fulfilling woke imperatives. So because there were no guns, so girls were being overpowered. It was realistic. But I have to say that, so the last year just sucked. And it was also because he got past the novels and they weren't taking him out of the novels anymore. But the last year sucked. But in the middle, it was one of the most riveting shows ever. There are times when I cared more about who won the Iron Throne than I cared about who won the next election. Just riveting storytelling. And I could talk about it for a long time, but I won't. Breaking Bad, I'll give it an A. I know people just loved that show. Yes, what was great about it was the descent of this guy into evil in order to find his manhood. And why that was great was because we were going through this period of the golden age of TV, but almost every great show was about an anti-hero, and that was because feminism had taken away the heroic in men, and they did not know how to make men heroes, because if masculinity is outlawed, only outlaws will be masculine. And what was good about Breaking Bad is it basically told that story. He starts out as a wimp, dictated to by his wife, working way below his talents, being bossed around at work, and by becoming a drug dealer, he actually becomes a man. I am the one who knocks. He takes control of his life, and it showed you why that modern life is despicable, and the only way out of it was criminality. And so now they've run out of those stories, and they yet haven't figured out how to make men men without insulting the feminists. And the way to do it, insult the feminists, because they deserve to be insulted. Girls, crap show, C. That was one of those shows where we were supposed to pretend this ugly, unfunny woman was attractive and funny. One of my favorite moments about Girls was when I took a trip to New York, and I said to somebody, no one's watching Girls. And they said, everyone is watching Girls. Everyone I know is watching Girls. And I said, I know. Everyone you know is watching Girls. No one is watching it. Very low-rated show, not loved, had no effect on the culture, except in New York. In New York, everybody was watching Girls. That woman was ugly and annoying. The sex in it wasn't sexy. It was just, and it wasn't funny. So I'm giving it a C because some people liked it. I guess that means something. Sopranos, S show, one of the best shows ever. Probably the first of those bad boy shows. What are they called? Troubled men shows. And just fantastic acting, and also a genuine moral core. It's what I call silhouetting. By showing you the evil, they showed you the morality. They kind of blacked out all the morality, so it became a silhouette. The lead was fantastic. The acting was fantastic. The writing was absolutely superior. It just got better and better and better. Tough show to watch sometimes because it was very ugly, but absolutely terrific. And sort of, as I say, the pioneer of the bad boy show. Seinfeld, I know people love Seinfeld, and it was certainly the show of its day. I'm going to give it a B.
Nice approach.
And let me just be fair about this. I don't like situation comedy. I just don't find it all that funny or interesting. Seinfeld was a good, interesting show with good performances and humorous. I liked it. I was in England at the time, so I wasn't reading anything about it, but I saw it in England, and I thought, oh, that's funny. It's a show about nothing. And that was kind of what the life was about until the World Trade Center, and then suddenly we found out that nothing don't mean nothing, and it isn't free, and so then Seinfeld became irrelevant. It's cute. I like it, but I don't think it's a spectacular show. Mad Men. Well, Mad Men is an interesting show. I will give it an S/B, and the reason it's an S/B is it's basically about America up until the time of the Kennedy assassination. After that, the show stinks. And it doesn't stink. It becomes second rate. But in those first episodes are great. It was making a statement about America, not a statement I entirely agree with, but it was a way of looking at America as being a fake. The American way was all an ad man's daydream. And that's a kind of an interesting way to look at things. And then when the Kennedy assassination happened, that was basically the end of the show. And then everything became a dream within a dream, or I, thought this happened or it didn't, or I imagined this happened, because the show was over and they just kept going. They didn't know when to let it go, and it ruined the show. So it was an S at first. It really was a spectacular, original, different show. And then after that, it was maybe a B or C. All in the Family. Again, I'm not a big fan of situation comedies. I thought it was all right. It kind of was a B show. Maybe I'll give it a B plus because it was groundbreaking. We'd never seen anything like it before. And with all these shows, it had this character who was supposed to be the bigot, who was supposed to shock us, Archie Bunker, but instead everybody liked him. Whenever you show a guy who tells the truth, he's always the conservative. You're supposed to hate him, like Alec Baldwin in 30 Rock, and he becomes the hero because he's go like, oh, somebody's speaking the truth, and he takes the show away, and then they have to ruin him and make him a villain. I thought it was an okay show, but it wasn't that funny, but it was groundbreaking. The West Wing, my wife loves that show, so maybe I should give it an A. My feeling about Aaron Sorkin is this. He has a style. It's an interesting style. He writes it well. Everything he says is shallow. I've never seen anything I remember watching that one about the army, You Can't Handle the Truth, with Jack Nicholson and all. I saw that as a play before it became a movie, and I thought, wow, that guy has a really interesting style, but he's really shallow. I felt that way about The West Wing. Somebody said The West Wing ruined America because it made people think that the people in Washington could actually solve their problems because they were smart and articulate, because they spoke the way Aaron Sorkin wrote. People did love it. I'll give it what? We'll give it an A because people loved it so much. I was not a big fan. The X-Files, another one that I would give a slash rating to. I would say it was an A show that became a B show. The best anthology scary show since The Twilight Zone. Had a really original character. Kind of both the characters were interesting. What was Scully? What was the other one's name? Scully and Mulder. I thought Mulder was really an interesting character. And it was fun, I really liked it. It was an A show, very entertaining. I like scary stories. Some of the stories were genuinely legit scary. It went on a little too long. It became a little too complex and conspiratorial, but it was good for a long time, and then it fell off. The Office American version. It's funny that they made the American version. I like the British version better, but the American version was more likable. It had S episodes. There's no question about it. Again, not probably the wrong guy to ask, but we'll call it an A show because I thought the British one was just uncompromising in how unlikable the character was. Really fun and really funny and stark, but it was not as pleasant to watch as the American one, where Americans like likable characters. It's just a cultural trait, and they made it more likable. But I give it an A because it was really different and funny and had moments that were genuinely laugh out loud funny. The Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone is another one. It started out great, really innovative. Only a small percentage of the stories were really good. So I'll give it an A because it was like nothing else you had ever seen, and it remains. What's the word? It remains iconic. Everybody knows the Twilight Zone. We still use the phrase the Twilight Zone. Some of the stories were written by some of the best short story writers living at the time. So I give it an A, but only a few, of those stories, maybe a season's worth of those stories were really superb and really iconic. But that's no small thing. So let's give it an S. I'm bumping it up to an S. South Park, really interesting. I don't know exactly how to rate South Park. South Park is certainly an A show because it is, when it's funny, it is funny beyond belief. When it is funny, it is just so funny. Some of the humor is cheap, but it still, when it works, it's funny. It's so scabrous, it's so ugly sometimes that it's hard to watch. But when it cooks, it's S. Let's say that. When it cooks, it is an S show because it's just really, really funny. And they'll say anything, except we can't insult Islam because they'll be taken off the air, but they can insult Christianity. But when it's funny, it is hilarious. I Love Lucy. I always hated that show. I'll tell you why I hated it. First of all, I don't think it's funny. I just never found her very funny. I found her, everybody said she was a comic genius. Maybe. Some of the slapstick is genius. I love her slapstick. But I hate humiliation humor. I can't stand to watch watch people be humiliated. I don't find it funny. I find it painful. Every now and again, I think with that movie, The In-Laws, they did it, so even I kind of found it funny, but it's just painful for me to watch. It's like watching a horror movie where they have guts and people being torn to pieces. I just don't want to do it. That's not the way I get entertained. So I never really liked the I Love Lucy show. I'll give it, I don't know, it's so iconic. It's hard to give it anything but an A, but I'll give it a B because I don't like it. Pee-wee's Playhouse? I don't know. That was a B show. It was kind of funny once or twice. I watched it a number of times. It was so weird and evil and kind of like just skewed. I never really got into it, but it was funny from time to time. I'll give it a B. The Shield, one of my favorite shows. I'm giving that show an S. And it wasn't always an S. I don't think any show that goes on for 5 seasons can always be an S. But I loved it because the first episode was the most shocking thing I'd ever seen. It was like the books that I had been writing that were kind of ahead of their time. And I looked at it and I said, oh, now it's all going to be on TV. And so I kind of knew the golden age of TV was coming. That first episode was unbelievable. The last season was unbelievable. The performances were great. And what I liked about it was about a really dirty cop. So it was one of the bad boy shows, but he was also a great cop. So you kind of were with him because he was such a great cop busting the bad guys, but he was also a terrible human being. Had some really intense, really intelligent stuff. And what I liked about it is it never got so pretentious that it stopped being entertaining. It was always a cop show. And I think it was the best of the dirty cop shows, the best of the really dark cop shows, except for NYPD Blue, which was equally good. Love The Shield. Daily Show with Jon Stewart, smug, unfunny, face-making show. Basically, elites talking to each other is safe. Fleabag, really good show. I liked it, especially the first season. I'll give that an A. That was a really interesting show. Survivor, that's crap. I mean, it's watchable crap, but it's a C show. The last one was The Americans. I loved it. I thought The Americans was great, terrific show. I would give that an S. That was an offbeat, really interesting show. Again, great performances, but also just really dark and interesting and with a terrific ending. It really brought itself to fruition in its ending, not like Game of Thrones. It didn't get lost. The Wire wasn't on this list. Did they not list The Wire? Oh, okay. The Wire was there, and it got taken off accidentally. The Wire was a great show too. The first 3 seasons of The Wire were just terrific, things we had never seen before. One of the most conservative shows written by one of the most left-wing radical people ever, and he didn't know. So that was fun. That wasn't bad. I didn't have to watch anything on TikTok. My eyes remain unbleached. My heart remains pure. My soul is flying off to heaven. So I guess this better come to an end because I'm obviously dead. If you rate this video S, like and subscribe to The Andrew Klavan Show, wherever you get your podcasts.